Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. According to General Hospital spoilers, Lulu Spencer is on the verge of revealing the truth about Giovanni Gio Palmieri, and if she does not do so by the end of this week, it will be exposed between May 26th and May 30th. Unfortunately, this will rock many people's worlds, including Dante Falconeri, Brooklyn Quartermaine Chase, Ned Quartermaine, Olivia Quartermaine, and Tracy. Not to mention how Gio will react to discovering that his entire existence, and the part he has played in his Bensonhurst family, has been a lie. Gio has recently had a difficult relationship with his biological father, Dante. After all, Gio erred by not contacting Dante or Lulu when he discovered Rocco Falconeri passed out at the beach party. Instead, he attempted to sober up the adolescent himself, and without Cody Bell, Rocco could have perished from alcohol poisoning. Despite Gio taking responsibility for his crimes and apologizing, everyone has forgiven him except Dante. The tension between the two has reached a fever pitch, with Dante refusing to back down from his position. Will Dante feel differently if the truth is revealed? Regardless, Gio may need time away from the Quartermaine estate once he discovers the truth. Not only does Dante need space, but so do Lois Cerullo and Brooklyn. Plus, he is linked to almost everyone who lives at the QS, so he may be overwhelmed when Lulu drops her bombshell about him. Joe's paternal grandfather is Sonny Corinthos. Nonetheless, the two just had a pleasant conversation in which the mob boss assured him that if he ever gets into a difficulty, he can simply contact him. This is before Sonny realizes Gio is his grandchild, so once the truth is revealed, he will be willing to move mountains for the young man. Could Gio end up at Sonny's apartment looking for somewhere to stay? Sonny's house does have room for one more guest, but it isn't as overpowering as the Q mansion, which has a family member around every corner. Donna Corinthos may be a nice distraction from Joe's drama, and Christina Corinthos Davis may begin polishing her aunt skills by lending Gio a shoulder to cry on and a listening ear. Furthermore, Sonny will be present to assist Gio in processing this significant news, and with his uncle Jason Morgan dropping by on occasion, Gio may receive some unexpected family support during this difficult time. According to General Hospital teasers, this will irritate Tracy, who has grown fond of Gio and is eager to strengthen her friendship with him. Of course, this is unlikely because she despises Sonny, and it may just exacerbate their antagonism as they fight over their baby grandson. General Hospital spoilers suggest a new romance between Doctors Portia Robinson and Isaiah Gannon. While they both work at the hospital, they haven't been particularly close. However, everything changed after the Friday, May 16th program. After his nurse's ball practice with Willow Tate Corinthos, Isaiah returned to work, and as he passed by Portia's office, he overheard the co-chief of staff ranting about lying to her husband, Curtis Ashford. Portia was speaking with Ava Jerome, and when Ava pushed the good doctor to tell her husband about all of her falsehoods, Portia snapped. Fast forward to Tuesday, May 20th, when Isaiah had a flashback to what he had heard and approached Portia at the ball. Of course, he did this after witnessing the tension between Curtis and Portia as the husband abruptly stepped away from his wife during the occasion. Isaiah was quick to offer Portia a drink and someone to lean on in case she wanted to talk. Could there be a relationship developing between these two? After all, Curtis is aware of Drew Kane's blackmail and that his wife has been lying to him, as he informed Jordan Ashford on May 20th. He'll be confronting Portia about this very soon. Fans are aware that Curtis does not tolerate lies, and given that he let Portia get away with lying about Trina Robinson's paternity for decades, the couple's days together are numbered. Aside from that, as Curtis continues to draw for Jordan, it appears that the ABC soap is playing musical chairs with its super couples, shifting Isaiah out of Jordan's life to insert Curtis and positioning him in front of Portia. After all, Isaiah's affair with Jordan was cut short due to her intention to bring Jen Sidwell. The handsome doctor is unexpectedly unmarried, so sparks may fly between him and Portia. Because of his flirtatious and charming personality, Isaiah has amazing chemistry with many of the leading ladies on screen. The last thing GH wants to do is let Isaiah down. Therefore, he needs an exciting narrative or a potential relationship vary away. Could he become entangled in the tumultuous arc between Curtis and Portia? Will he start a romance with his hospital colleague? According to General Hospital spoilers, when one relationship ends for Portia, a new acquaintance in Isaiah may represent a fresh start and thrilling romance for this difficult character, who frequently vacillates between good and not-so-good deeds. Aiden McCoy and Maurice Benard spoke on the State of Mind podcast this weekend. During their conversation, she talked about school, but she also shared how she felt after her mother died. Read on to learn more. Nobody knew her mother was unwell. Maurice urged Aiden to talk about her mother, Natasha. Aiden explained that her mother did not want everyone to know about her cancer diagnosis. Nobody knew her mother had been fighting the sickness for years. It was a dreadful weight for Aiden to bear, but she followed her mother's wishes. The real-life Jocelyn Jacks stated, "I was walking around with something like that, with weight like that, and nobody knew. You would never have known." Those experiences, however, taught Aiden McCoy to look at people with empathy, because she realized firsthand that no one fully understands what others are experiencing. Aiden McCoy opens up on losing her mother, coping with death. The GH star cherished her mother, and when she died, it was terrible. She recently spoke with a friend, who inquired how she dealt with her loss. Everyone navigates grief in their own unique way. So within Aiden thought, "Let me know when you find out. Death isn't something you can solve," she explained. The ABC actress benefited from the fact that she had numerous pals to keep her company. "I hadn't been alone for months. I was never alone," she said, recalling the time when my friends became my everything. People were going to my house in shifts just to be there. I recall not wanting to be alone. That lasted months, and it was just enjoyable spending time with my buddies. Her mother is not dead to her. Recognizing the reality of Aiden's grief, Maurice Benard learned that she was grateful that her mother kept a gratitude journal, which she still uses today. Another way she copes is to acknowledge that her mother was a part of her. Aiden McCoy explained, "Still sucks. However, you can have a relationship with someone who is not physically present. You can build a relationship with someone who is not present. We aren't taught that. We're taught that they die, it's over, go on. But it is just not the case. It is, assuming you want to see it that way. But I come from my mother. I am my mother. She physically made me. She is a scientifically valid part of my body, which provides me great comfort. Also, I'm constantly learning new things about her because I'm a growing person." Gio rejects adoption truth. Moves in with SONNY to avoid parents? The news of Joe's adoption threw shockwaves through his life, leaving him with an identity problem and a profound sense of betrayal. For years he had trusted the family system that had reared him, only to learn that his parents had withheld a life-changing secret from him. The emotional aftermath was swift, with rage, perplexity, and a strong need to isolate himself from those he had once trusted the most. In a stunning turn of events, Gio packed his things and fled, finding safety with SONNY, a close friend who had always seemed more like family than his own blood. Joe's decision to move in with SONNY initially appeared rash, a knee-jerk reaction to the pain of the truth. But as the days passed into weeks, it became evident that this was more than just an escape. It was a rebellion. His adoptive parents, anxious to bridge the schism, reached out several times, but Gio turned them down, refusing to engage in conversations that felt too little, too late. To him, their attempts at reconciliation just served to cement the years of lying. How could he trust them again when they had concealed something so fundamental about his identity? Living with SONNY brought a temporary sense of security, but it was not a lasting answer. SONNY's house was a haven free of the heavy expectations and lies that had dragged Gio down, but it lacked the deep-rooted bond of family, even if it was a flawed one. SONNY, a sympathetic but sensible figure, gently advised Gio to address his emotions rather than run from them. But Gio wasn't prepared. The wound was still new, and the treachery was too deep. Meanwhile, his adoptive parents were distraught, wondering every decision that had led to this point. Should they have informed him sooner? Would it have made a difference? The guilt gnawed at them, but they couldn't remove the impression that Joe's reaction was excessive. Yes, they had hidden the facts, but they had loved him unconditionally. Didn't that count for something? Joe's rage gradually transformed into something more complicated, grief. He was mourning not only the loss of faith in his parents, but also the loss of the person he thought he was. His entire sense of self was based on a foundation that was suddenly eroding. Who was he exactly? Was biology even relevant, or was family defined by the ties formed over time? These questions tormented him, but he could not bring himself to confront his parents. Watching Gio struggle, Sonny realized that avoiding the situation was not an option. He mounted an intervention, compelling Gio to express his pain rather than hide it. Gio finally broke down during one of these naked, unedited chats, saying that some of his wrath originated from fear of being unlovable, fear that his entire existence had been a lie. Sonny listened, providing no simple answers but reminding Gio that running away would not heal the pain. Back at home, Joe's parents were having their own realizations. They had been so focused on protecting him from suffering that they had overlooked how the concealment could harm him in the long term. They were discovering that love was more than just shielding someone. It was also about being honest, even when it was difficult. They agreed to give Gio space while being prepared to speak with him when he was ready. The turning point occurred unexpectedly. Gio received a letter penned by his adoptive mother, full of genuine apologies and no excuses. She didn't seek for forgiveness. She just wanted him to know she understood his anguish, and that she loved him unconditionally. For the first time since the disclosure, Gio felt empathy rather than fury. He learned that his parents, like him, were human, capable of making errors and feeling sorrow. It was not an immediate reconciliation. Trust once damaged takes time to repair. However, Gio began to soften, allowing brief phone conversations and later short visits. The chats were unpleasant at first, with pauses and unspoken apologies, but they served as a starting point. He gradually began to regard his parents not as villains, but as flawed people who did their best. Gio was surprised by how the experience transformed him. He had spent weeks believing that biology was the ultimate truth, but now he questioned whether love wasn't the most powerful force. His parents had chosen, reared, and loved him, even if they made mistakes along the way. This had to imply something. In the end, Gio did not return home immediately. He needed more time to reflect and recreate his sense of self on his own terms. But he no longer saw Sonny's place as an escape, but rather as a temporary halt on his journey to figuring things out. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since the truth was revealed, Gio felt hopeful that he might someday find peace. His journey was far from over, but one thing was certain. Family, whether by blood or choice, was complicated, unpleasant, and occasionally broken, but it was also worth fighting for. The dissolution of a marriage is never easy, and Portia's abrupt end to her relationship with Curtis has left her emotionally devastated. Curtis, once a source of stability in her life, has chosen to walk away, forcing her to confront a future she never imagined, one in which she must navigate the complexity of loss, loneliness, and recreating her identity devoid of the partnership on which she had grown to rely. In the aftermath of such a deep loss, it's only natural for Portia to seek solace in those closest to her, and Isaiah appears to be that person. Isaiah has always been a dependable figure in Portia's life, whether as a confidant, a friend, or something more. Their friendship, formed over years of shared experiences, has weathered many storms, but none as intimate as this. As Portia deals with the emotional consequences of her broken marriage, Isaiah's place in her life appears to change from supportive friend to something considerably more important. His ability to listen without judgment and offer consolation without expectation provides her with a safe haven in the midst of her emotional turmoil. But as she relies more on him, worries arise. Is Isaiah simply filling the gap Curtis left behind? Or is something deeper, long unspoken, rising to the surface? Portia's shift from married to single woman is laden with anxiety. The life she had carefully built with Curtis, their routines, shared dreams, and even their disagreements, all vanished in an instant. In Isaiah, she finds more than just a shoulder to weep on. He reminds her that she is still deserving of love and companionship. His presence reassures her that she is not alone, even when the loneliness feels overwhelming. However, reliance can be a dangerous thing. As she spends more time with Isaiah, the lines between friendship and romance blur, leaving both of them wondering if their connection is based on genuine devotion or emotional necessity. Curtis' departure has left a gaping hole in Portia's life, and while Isaiah may help fill it temporarily, the true problem is whether she can heal on her own. Emotional rebounds are typical after a separation, particularly a difficult one like divorce, but they rarely lead to long-term happiness if they are motivated by desperation rather than true desire. Portia must ask herself whether she is turning to Isaiah because she genuinely wants him, or because she can't handle the notion of being alone. Isaiah, for his part, appears to be willing to be whatever Portia requires in this moment, whether it's a buddy, a distraction, or something more. However, his personal feelings complicate matters. Has he always cherished deep feelings for her, waiting for the proper time to express them? Or is he merely acting like a faithful friend would, unconscious of the consequences? If his support stems from unspoken love, this could be the start of a wonderful new chapter for them both. However, if it is only a temporary solution to Portia's pain, the consequences could permanently harm their connection. The folks around them had taken note of their developing intimacy. Friends mutter, wondering if Portia and Isaiah had crossed a line. Some are concerned that Portia is moving too rapidly, using Isaiah as an emotional crutch rather than taking the time to recover. Others believe that this is fate's method of putting two people, who were always destined to be together, into each other's embrace. The reality, as is often the case in matters of the heart, is somewhere in the middle. Portia's healing path is only just beginning, and Isaiah's place in it is still unclear. If she hurries into another relationship without first addressing the wounds left by her previous marriage, she risks making the same mistakes. But if she allows herself to lean on Isaiah in a healthy way, getting strength from their bond without losing herself in it, their relationship has the potential to become genuine and long-lasting. Portia is currently comforted by Isaiah's presence, which may be sufficient. The future is uncertain, but in the middle of her anguish, she has realized that she is not as isolated as she had imagined. Whether their relationship continues platonic or develops into romance, one thing is certain. Isaiah has become an indispensable part of her life, and at this moment of weakness, it may be just what she needs. According to GH Previews, Willow's world will be turned upside down when she learns that her estranged husband has returned to town and is ready to battle for his children in person. In fact, it will only strengthen his prospects of gaining complete custody of Wiley and Amelia. Still, if the sun and moon align and Willow learns about Drew and Nina's affair just as Michael arrives, her world will be shattered on numerous levels. Will she eventually recognize Drew as the trash he is? Will she have no one to turn to but Michael? Could Willow and Michael sense sparks when he returned? How will this affect his other baby mommy, Sasha Corbin? Fans will need to tune in to find out. Finally, with Lulu Spencer urging Lois Cerullo to spill the Giovanni Gio Palmieri beans recently, the secret is on the verge of blowing up and will most likely be revealed by the week of May 26th to 30th. Brooklyn Quartermaine Chase and Dante Falconeri will be shocked to hear that they have been living under the same roof as their long-lost son for months. Furthermore, the retribution Lois will receive in the aftermath, as well as Joe's conflicting emotions, will undoubtedly be unprecedented. Michael's surprise homecoming in Port Charles struck shockwaves through the lives of those closest to him, particularly Willow, who had spent months dealing with his mysterious absence. His return was anything from quiet, bringing with him a flurry of unresolved emotions, unanswered questions, and a secret that threatened to upend Willow's understanding of their past. When she laid eyes on him, a torrent of contradictory emotions overcame her. Relief, fury, and betrayal warred within her as she tried to reconcile the man standing in front of her with the one who had disappeared without a word. Michael, for his part, appeared troubled and determined, his eyes reflecting a voyage that had altered him in ways no one could comprehend. The tension between them was palpable, like a silent storm rising beneath the surface, and it was only a matter of time until the dam broke, unleashing a confrontation that would either fix their damaged link or break it forever. Carly and Tracy formed an unexpected alliance, promising to shake up the power equations in Port Charles. Carly, ever the thinker, was looking for a means to regain her footing following a string of personal and professional losses. Tracy, sharp-witted and unafraid to play the long game, saw an opportunity to further her own agenda while keeping her adversaries, and even some allies, guessing. Their alliance was formed out of necessity rather than trust, with each lady fully aware that the other had her own agenda. Nonetheless, they shared a grudging respect, recognizing that collectively, they could be an unstoppable force. The town waited with bated breath as their plans unfurled, wondering who would win, or if their collaboration would result in betrayal. Across town, Gio was navigating a world unfamiliar to him, one that challenged his assumptions and forced him to confront facts he had long ignored. Following a life-changing encounter, he returned with a new viewpoint that put him at odds with his former self. His old behaviors and connections were no longer appropriate for the person he was evolving into. Some welcomed the shift, recognizing in him a maturity that had been absent previously. Others, however, watched his metamorphosis with mistrust, doubting whether the new Gio was genuine or just another ruse. As he battled to find his place in this strange reality, he encountered opposition from individuals who preferred the old version of him, forcing him to make difficult decisions about who he wanted to be and who he was ready to let go. The merging of these storylines spun a web of drama, passion, and intrigue that captivated Port Charles. Michael's reappearance prompted Willow to confront her darkest fears and wants. Carly and Tracy's partnership blurred the borders between friend and foe, and Joe's growth called into question his entire identity. Each of them stood at a crossroads, with their actions having far-reaching ramifications for their own and others' lives. Willow was unsure whether she could or wanted to forgive Michael. Their history was tangled with equal parts love and tragedy. His disappearance had left scars, and his sudden reappearance ripped them open again. In his absence, she had created a life for herself that may no longer include him. But the attraction between them was apparent, a magnetic force that drew them together while threatening to destroy them. Will they be able to reconnect? Or will their love be lost in the upheaval that seemed to follow them? Carly and Tracy's relationship was a ticking time bomb, with each woman too savvy to totally trust the other. Carly had spent years playing the game, always one step ahead, but Tracy was a seasoned manipulator with decades of practice. Their teamwork was a deceptive dance, with each step calibrated to achieve their own goals. However, as they worked together, they came to recognize aspects of themselves in one another. The same drive, the same unwavering ambition. It was a hazardous realization, one that could either strengthen their friendship or spark a rivalry beyond anything Port Charles had ever seen. Joe's journey was possibly the most intimate, with a silent revolution happening within him. His old existence no longer fit, and the process of letting it go was agonizing. Friends who had formerly been his closest companions now felt like strangers, their expectations too much to bear. But in this new universe he was building, there was freedom, the ability to define himself on his own terms. The path ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time, he felt he was heading in the right direction. As these events emerged, Port Charles residents were left wondering what would happen next. Michael's secrets, Carly and Tracy's machinations, Joe's transformation. All were threads in a greater tapestry that promised equal parts love, treachery, and redemption. There was just one certainty. Nothing would ever be the same again. Michael's return rocks Willow. Michael's sudden return to Port Charles was like a thunderclap in the middle of a calm storm. Unexpected, shocking, and impossible to ignore. Willow had been in a condition of suspended anguish for months, torn between the desperate hope that Michael would return and the crushing terror that he would never come back. She had repeated their last discussion in her head 1,000 times, looking for hints, any indication that he was preparing to leave. But there had been nothing, only an empty place where he had once been, a hole that no amount of reasoning could fill. And suddenly he was back. When she saw him, her breath caught in her throat. He looked different, older, harsher, as if life had etched new lines into his face while he was away. His eyes, once so familiar, now contained shadows she couldn't recognize. For a moment they just stared at one another, the weight of his absence hanging between them like an unspoken indictment. "You left," she finally said quietly, her voice shaking. Michael flinched, as if the words had physically touched him. "I had to. That was it." No great explanation, no heartfelt apology. Just 3 words that did nothing to alleviate months of unresolved questions. Willow's hands clenched at her sides, her nails cutting into her palms as she battled the need to shout, cry, and demand an explanation. But underlying the rage was something worse, a perilous flash of relief. Because, despite everything, a part of her had always loved him. The community, of course, had its theories. Some speculated that Michael had been fleeing the law, while others speculated that he had been led away by an old adversary. Some even speculated that he had faked his own death. But the truth, as it turned out, was far more complicated. Michael hadn't left on purpose, not totally. A hazardous entanglement from his past had returned, sending him into hiding to safeguard those he cared about. The specifics were vague with half-truths and omissions, but one thing was certain. He had not abandoned Willow. He'd been trying to save her. However, whether she could forgive him was another story. Their first serious argument occurred in the dark lighting of her flat, with the air thick with anxiety. "You could have told me," Willow replied in a low, wounded voice. "You could have trusted me enough to let me decide whether I wanted to run with you." Michael's jaw stiffened. "And if I had? Would you have really walked away from your life here? From your family? Your job?" The question lingered between them, unanswered. Because the truth was that Willow had no idea. Willow from a year ago might have followed him anywhere. But what about Willow, who has weathered his absence? She was not the same woman. And that was the crux of it. Michael had not only left, he had altered her, forced her to restart her life without him. And now that he was back, she wasn't sure she could, or wanted to reverse it. Their narrative was far from finished. But it was unclear whether it would end in reconciliation or ruin. Carly and Tracy collaborate. Carly Corinthos knew how to survive. She had endured betrayals, losses, and plans that would have destroyed lesser women. But even she had to acknowledge that she was running out of moves. Her most recent failure had left her vulnerable, with her normal network of sympathizers fragmented or turning against her. She needed a new strategy. As luck would have it, the most unlikely person in Port Charles was about to make her an offer. Tracy Quartermain had never been one to turn down an opportunity. So when she noticed Carly backed into a corner, she did what any self-respecting master manipulator would do. She offered her an offer. "You need leverage," Tracy said one afternoon as she unexpectedly entered Carly's office. "And as it happens, I have some." Carly gave her a wary look. "And why would you help me?" Tracy's smile was razor keen. "Let's just say our enemies have a common enemy. And I've always believed in the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is still probably my enemy," Carly concluded dryly. But she listened. Their alliance was, by all accounts, ephemeral. A marriage of convenience between two women who didn't trust anyone, least of all themselves. But once they started working together, something unexpected happened. They realized their skills were good. Carly's street-smart savvy worked perfectly alongside Tracy's deliberate cruelty. Tracy was ice to Carly's fire, and the two were unstoppable together. Their first objective was Cyrus Renault, a mutual rival whose recent power play had put them both in jeopardy. Using Tracy's insider knowledge and Carly's talent for psychological warfare, they demolished his operation piece by piece. It was stunningly precise and terrifyingly efficient. However, alliances like theirs were inherently weak. "This doesn't make us friends," Carly reminded Tracy one night as they toasted their first victory. Tracy lifted a glass. "Darling, I don't have friends. I have assets. And right now, you're a very valuable one." The unsaid warning was clear. This collaboration would persist only as long as it was beneficial. And both women understood the other was perfectly capable of cutting ties the instant it wasn't. The true question was, who would make the initial move when the moment came? Joe's new world. Gio had always been the life of the party, a charismatic and reckless wild card who lived in the moment. The man who returned to Port Charles after a mysterious hiatus was different, quieter, be more deliberate. His pals quickly noticed it. "Dude, what happened to you?" one of his former jogging buddies inquired, half joking. "You act like you've been brainwashed." Gio only grinned slightly. "Maybe I have." The fact was that he had changed, but not in the way everyone expected. During his absence, Gio was forced to confront an aspect of himself he had spent years avoiding. A near-death experience had taken away his typical arrogance, leaving him with a clarity he'd never felt before. The old Gio would have laughed at the concept of self-reflection. The new Gio? He couldn't stop. He began making various choices. Cut ties with poisonous influences. He was reaching out to folks with whom he had previously broken off contact. Not everyone was satisfied with the transformation. "You're boring now," an ex-girlfriend remarked. "No," Gio replied gently. "I'm awake." His journey was far from completed, but for the first time in his life he felt like he was on the right track. The aftermath and what lies ahead. As these three narratives evolved, waves swept across Port Charles. Michael and Willow's reconnection divided their loved ones, some hoping for reconciliation, while others warned Willow not to trust him again. Carly and Tracy's cooperation sent shockwaves through the town's power figures, leaving everyone wondering,